The webinar has been started.
Moya's online now.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the subcommittee on zoning and franchises. At this time, please silence all electronics. At this time, also, please do not approach the dais. I repeat, please do not approach the dais. If you wish to testify online, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. If you need any extra assistance, please contact the sergeant. Chair, you may begin.
Good morning and welcome to a meeting of the Subcommittee on Zoning and Franchises. I am Councilmember Riley, Chair of the Subcommittee, and I'm joined today remotely by Councilmember Moya and Salam, and present by Councilmember Shulman, Carr, and Hanks. Today we are scheduled to hold 3 votes and 1 hearing. The first vote concerns LUs 90 and 91, which consists of the 2118 Avenue U rezoning proposal. The second vote concerns LUs 92, which consists of the 58-75 Queens Midtown Expressway rezoning proposal. The third vote concerns LUs 93, which consists of the 27-24 College Point Boulevard commercial overlay proposal. Turning to the hearing, the development team for the Arthur Kill Terminal proposal will walk us through their application, which consists of LUs 101, 102, 103, and 104. This meeting is being held in hybrid format. Members of the public who wish to testify may testify in person or via Zoom. Members of the public wishing to testify remotely may register by visiting the New York City Council website at www.council.nyc.gov/land-use to sign up, and for those of you here in person, please see one of the sergeant-at-arms to prepare and submit a speaker's card. Members of the public may also view a live stream broadcast of this meeting at the council's website. When you are called to testify before the subcommittee, if you are joining remotely, you will remain muted until recognized by myself to speak. When you are recognized, the microphone will unmute. Please take a moment to check your device and confirm that your mic is on before you begin speaking. We will limit public testimony to 2 minutes per witness. If you have additional testimony you would like to submit to the subcommittee to consider, or if you have written testimony you would like to submit instead of appearing in person, please email it to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Written testimony may be submitted up to 3 days after the hearing is closed. Please indicate the LU number and or the project in the name subject line of your email. We request that the witnesses joining us remotely remain in the meeting until excused by the chair, as council members may have questions. Lastly, for everyone attending today's meeting, this is a government proceeding and decorum must be observed at all times. Members of the public are asked not to speak during the meeting unless you are testifying. The witness table is reserved for people who are called to testify, and no video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recording as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recording to the sergeant-at-arms for inclusion in the hearing record. Starting with today's votes, the first vote is to approve LUs 90 and 91 concerning the proposal known as the 2118 Avenue U. This proposal development consists of a mixed-use residential building located in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, within Councilmember Vernikoff's district. The buildings would contain approximately 10 units with retail space and be subject to mandatory inclusionary housing. The proposal involves 2 actions. The first action consists of rezoning the existing R4 residential zoning district with a C1-2 commercial overlay to an R6A zoning district with a C2-4 commercial overlay. The second action is to map a mandatory inclusionary housing over the rezoning which will require that up to 3 of the units be permanently affordable. Councilmember Vernikov supports this proposal. The second vote is to approve LU 92 concerning the proposal known as the 58-75 Queens Midtown Expressway. This proposal development consists of enlarging an existing manufacturing building located in Maspeth, Queens, within Councilmember Wan's district. The business in the current building is seeking to grow and need more space. The proposal involves one action, which consists of rezoning the existing M1-1 manufacturing zoning district to an M1-4 manufacturing district. Councilmember Wan supports this proposal. The third vote is to approve LU's 93 concerning the proposal known as 27-24 College Point Boulevard. This proposal seeks to develop a drive-through business along the College Point Boulevard, Flushing, Queens, within Councilmember Palladino's district. Besides allowing the development of a drive-through business on a vacant corner lot, the proposal will legalize existing businesses in the rezoning area. The proposal involves one action, which consists of mapping a C2-3 commercial overlay over the project's area. Councilmember Palladino supports this area. Council, are there any members with questions or remarks at this time?
No, Chair.
I now call for a vote to approve LUs 90 and 91 relating to 2118 Avenue U rezoning proposal, to approve LU 92 relating to 58-75 Queens Midtown Expressway rezoning proposal, and to approve LUs 93 relating to 27-24 College Point Boulevard rezoning proposal. Council, please call the roll. Just want to recognize for the record, we have Minority Leader Joseph Borelli and Councilmember Abreu that walked in.
I will now proceed to the roll call vote of the votes that the Chair just enumerated. Chair Riley?
Aye.
Councilmember Moya?
Vote aye.
Councilmember Abreu?
Aye.
Councilmember Hanks?
Aye.
Councilmember Shulman?
Aye.
Councilmember Salam?
I vote aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye on all.
By a vote of 7 in affirmative, 0 in opposition, and 0 abstention, the items are approved and referred to the full Land Use Committee.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing on LUs 101, 102, 103, and 104 relating to the Arthur Kill Terminal rezoning and text amendment proposal in Minority Leader Borelli's district. This proposal consists of creating a manufacturing staging area focused on assembling windmills, and it is located just south of Outer Bridge Crossing Bridge. For anyone wishing to testify on this item remotely, if you have not already done so, you must register online, and you may do that now by visiting the council's website at council.nyc.gov/landuse. And once again, for anyone with us in person, please see one of the sergeants to prepare and submit a speaker's card. If you would prefer to submit written testimony, you can always do so by emailing it to us to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. I would now like to give the floor to Minority Leader Borelli to give his remarks.
No.
Good? All right, thank you. I will now call the applicant panel for this item, which consists of Boone Davis, Charles Doherty, and Joshua Rhinesmith. Sorry if I butcher your names. Council, please administer the affirmation.
Please raise your right hand and state your name for the record.
Charles Doherty.
Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before the subcommittee and in your answers to all council member questions?
Yes.
I do.
Thank you. For the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Please, before you begin, just reinstate your name and organization for the record.
My name is Charles Doherty. Boone Davis, who is the CEO of our company, unfortunately is ill and as a result is not able to attend today, so I'll be speaking on behalf of Arthur Kill Terminal. The presentation that we have already provided to the committee, I think, is a fairly good overview of the project, of the needs for the project, and of the benefits that the project is going to bring to Staten Island and to New York. What I'd like to do is, rather than plod you through another PowerPoint, I'd rather simply just focus on what I think are the key features of our proposal, if I may. And so let me start by the need for the project. Between now and 2035, New York State is required by statute to create 9 gigawatts of offshore wind energy. To date, there is under contract roughly a little more than 2 gigawatts of offshore wind energy, so there is still nearly 7 gigawatts of offshore wind energy to contract and then to build. The first project building offshore wind energy for New York has just commenced construction. So there is a lot that needs to happen over the next 10 years to meet that statutory mandate. For the companies that build these offshore wind energy farms and operate them, they need ports in order to deploy for the construction. Ports where the major components for the offshore wind turbines can be brought, can be assembled, and can be commissioned and then placed onto installation vessels to be sent out to the farms in the New York Bight and ultimately beyond the New York Bight. There are at present no such ports in New York State. One such port, the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, has commenced construction, will be available sometime in the next 2 years or so, but that one port can't come close to meeting the port needs of New York State if it's to meet that statutory mandate. Arthur Kill Terminal is that second port and is absolutely essential to New York meeting both its short-term and its long-term offshore wind energy goals. The short-term goal of New York State, as I stated, is 9 gigawatts by 2035. But as has been acknowledged by NYSERDA and as the state's Climate Council has stated, ultimately New York probably needs twice that amount of offshore wind energy if it's to meet its long-term renewable energy and emission reduction goals, which simply underscores the need for New York also to build the ports without which these offshore wind farms cannot be built. Arthur Kill Terminal is absolutely key to New York meeting both its short-term and its long-term offshore wind energy goals. They will not be met without the Arthur Kill Terminal. We spent probably better than a year trying to find the right site for this port in New York State. And I can say, based on that exhaustive survey that we have created a presentation on that if the committee would like it, that there is no site better than the site just south of the Outer Bridge Crossing in Staten Island for a port such as ours. And the reason for that is that we have direct access out to the ocean, and that access is unrestricted, which means that there are no air restrictions such as the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal has with the Verrazano Bridge, which means that any form of installation vessel that the offshore wind operators want to use to install their farms can be used at our port, and we will be the only port in New York that allows them to do that. That is absolutely the key attribute that is required by the industry to be able to efficiently, effectively, and cost-effectively build their farms. We bring that to them. We also are undeveloped so that we can start from scratch, which means that the weight-bearing requirements that the industry has for these very, very large equipments can be met. It also means that we can build a quay that's long enough to allow for simultaneous inbound and outbound operations, which means at the same time that cargo vessels are bringing the components to the site, we can also be loading commissioned or pre-commissioned towers onto installation vessels to go out to the ocean to build that site. That, again, is unique to this site and is absolutely essential, again, to the effective deployment of these components for the construction of offshore wind in the New York Bight. The benefits that we bring to New York, beyond the obvious benefits from fostering the program for renewable energy and for reduction of emissions, is severalfold. First off, we're going to be able to bring roughly 600 construction jobs to Staten Island over a 2-year period. Once we are built, Our best estimation is that approximately 150 individuals will be employed at the site. The employment will vary from day to day and week to week, depending on what operations are occurring. But overall, we're talking about 150 new jobs. These are career jobs. These are union jobs. These are very well-paying jobs. And we are going to do everything we can and to make sure that as many of those jobs as possible go to residents of New York, and more specifically to residents of Staten Island. We are currently engaged in several different efforts to develop workforce on Staten Island and otherwise in New York City, and we will continue those efforts over the course of the next 6, 7, 5, 8 years by making both investments in workforce development and also by actually hosting various workforce development events and programs at our site once it's built. In addition, just the spending alone that will occur in relation to both the construction of the site and in its operations is very significant. We've had to prepare estimates of the economic benefits of the operation for the purposes of seeking New York State and federal funding, and we have estimated that the construction will bring roughly $750 million worth of economic investment in Staten Island and greater New York City. And once we are in operation, we expect that we will make an annual contribution in excess of $100 million to the local economy and to the greater New York City economies. So the benefits are considerable. Whenever you talk about benefits, then you always want to talk about downside. And the downside here is that to do this project at this site, we are going to have an impact on the wetlands. There are approximately 3 acres of putative freshwater wetlands on the site, which is really just a glorified drainage ditch, but they're classified as freshwater wetlands. We are going to fill those. We also have to dredge roughly 18 acres next to the Federal Navigation Channel in order to allow passage of ships from the Federal Navigation Channel to the new quay that we're going to build. That's going to change fish habitat. And finally, to build the quay, we're going to have to fill, call it roughly 9 acres that's currently beach and littoral areas. But the good news is that right now that beach is not productive habitat, and the also good news is that the littoral area, that is the area in the water just next to the beach, is also very low quality habitat. But nevertheless, we are going to have that impact. And to satisfy the regulatory agencies, both at the city, state, and federal levels, we have undertaken significant efforts to come up with a mitigation plan to mitigate those wetlands impacts. And we're going to be doing, we hope, 2 programs. One is we are going to remediate and also restore roughly 7 acres at the Mariners Marsh Park in northern Staten Island. That park is currently closed to the public because of contamination. We are going to take roughly 7 acres of that, deal with the contamination, and also restore it to a vibrant wetlands on a freshwater basis. The second program that we've undertaken, and this took a long time to get all the agencies to basically sign off on it, we're still working on final sign-off, but is that we are going to address the impacts in the tidal wetlands by restoring roughly 35 acres of currently impaired wetlands in Jamaica Bay in the Black Bank area. We had hoped to do that work on Staten Island, but there was no site or combination of sites on Staten Island that met the requirements of both the federal and the state agencies that have jurisdiction over this. So ultimately, we had no choice but to look for alternatives, and the alternative we finally arrived at was this site in Staten Island. It is one of the largest private restoration efforts that's ever been undertaken in New York Harbor. It will have the effect of not only restoring 35 acres of tidal wetlands in Jamaica Bay, but will also serve then to protect an additional 60-plus acres in Black Bank. It will have an amazing impact positively on the on the ecosystem in Jamaica Bay. And again, we tried very hard to do this work in Staten Island, but there simply was not a viable option to do that. The good news is that we were at least able to do the freshwater mitigation in Staten Island, and that's going to be a major advancement in reopening Mariners Mark as a viable park for the citizens of Staten Island, at least in northern Staten Island. That, in a nutshell, I think, is the project. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I just have a few questions that I'm going to pass over to the minority leader. It is my understanding that the offshore wind projects along the state shoreline were recently canceled. Are you confident that there are wind developers interested and ready to use your site once it's completed?
Yeah, let me answer that in a couple of ways. First of all, yes, we are confident, and I'll tell you why, which is for exactly the same reasons as the reasons that I was outlining at the beginning for the need for this port. The fact of the matter is that New York has to build offshore wind energy if it has any hope of meeting its emissions reductions and renewable energy goals. It has to have this port. It has to have offshore wind energy. The recent cancellations, which are fortunately not so recent now, were blips. They were typical growing pains of an industry that's still very much in formation. But the fact of the matter is that since those contract cancellations, and I'm just talking about New York, New Jersey's another example, but in New York, those contracts were canceled. And what happened immediately after that was there was a new solicitation and new contracts were awarded. New contracts have been signed for that new solicitation. And one of those two projects, the Sunrise Project, has commenced construction. So that is the first project being built in the New York Bight area or even outside of it that is going to be supplying offshore wind energy directly to New York. And the second project is at least beginning to be underway, but it's going to be a little while before it's still under construction. After those two contract cancellations, there then was a second set of cancellations as a result of a problem with General Electric and the manufacturing that had been proposed for it up in the capital region. NYSERDA took steps immediately to commence a new solicitation to replace the contracts that had fallen apart as a result of the GE problem. There's an RFP coming out sometime in the next few weeks to address that. Those awards should be made sometime in the fall, which means that by the end of this year, beginning of next year, those new contracts will be signed and they'll be on their way. Everyone understands in the industry and in the government agencies that are most involved in the industry that this has to happen. The last thing I'll say is that this project doesn't get built unless a lot of people are satisfied that it's going to be used. It's possible that if this were a project of a government agency, that it could get built whether or not somebody's made a good business case for it to be built. But that's not this project. This project only gets built by the investment of hundreds of millions of dollars by professional investors and by commercial lenders who are going to be lending it probably close to $200 million. Those parties are not going to agree to invest that money or to make those loans unless we've made the business case for there being a need for the project, for us to being able to show that we're going to, in fact, realize the revenues that will come from the use of that project to satisfy those investors and to satisfy those lenders. There's just no way that this project goes up unless we have done what I've just laid out, which is that business case that, in fact, the project is going to get used. Offshore wind energy is coming. It's been delayed. It's going to end up costing more than people had hoped it was going to cost, but it is going to happen.
Has the environmental review considered any potential impacts on the drivers on the Outerbridge crossing?
Yes, in the sense that, well, there are a couple of different ways. We did a traffic study which showed that because much of our transportation activity is going to occur by water rather than by land, that we will have very minimal impact on traffic. We don't expect there to be any material impact on traffic. In terms of light impact on the Outerbridge crossing drivers, our lights are below the bridge. The bridge's lights are much higher than ours and also are much brighter than what our lights will be. So there will be no light impact on anyone driving on Outerbridge crossing during the evening or at any time during the night. So we don't expect that there will be any impact on Outerbridge crossing drivers. And I should mention, since we're talking about the crossing, that We have been engaged with the Port Authority for over 3 years now, walking them through our engineering and having them play a role really in the final design of the project to ensure that there will be no impairment of Outer Bridge Crossing as a result of either our construction or our operation. And we are building in extra protections for Outer Bridge Crossing, really sort of as a belt and suspenders. So the Port Authority has had ample opportunity to comment on our design and to make suggestions for any improvements that they thought were required.
Thank you. What type of training is needed to work on a wind development site?
To work on the offshore wind energy sites or the port site?
The offshore.
Okay, offshore, largely it's twofold. One is you simply have to get height training because a lot of that work is occurring at heights, and you have to get what's called offshore water training. In other words, you have to be someone who's comfortable finding themselves in the drink. And then you have to become familiar with the specialized equipment that's used in these turbines. But that's the same kind of familiarity that, for example, any electrician has to deal with every time they encounter a new piece of equipment. It's not like it's a whole different world. It's just that it's a little different equipment than what they may have been working with before. So we would fully expect that a number of the tradespeople and artisans that currently work in New York have the base knowledge to be very productive workers on these offshore wind farms. They just need that height training, they need the GWO training to be working out in the water.
And are you doing local hiring?
Absolutely.
So how would you be able to train the local hires that possibly don't have this expertise?
Well, keep in mind that we're not doing any of that on the water work. So I think probably our second hire when we were first beginning to develop this project was to hire our architect, who is a Tottenville architect. So we have been trying since day one to make sure to the maximum extent possible we're using Staten Island folks. And the good news is that in terms of the people that will be either directly or indirectly hiring for the construction of the project and then for its operation, that doesn't require height training and it doesn't require specialized in water training. It just requires them to come and bring their existing skills as electricians, millwrights, operating engineers, I can keep going, painters, and do it in our context. But much of what they're going to be doing is what they already know how to do.
Okay. I'll pass it to Minority Leader.
Thank you, Charles. Can you just talk more? You mentioned the lights and the height of the lights. So can you just segue that perhaps into talking about what mitigation might be needed just for the general neighborhood? You know, how can you perhaps reduce sound during certain hours and keep people from feeling like they're living next to a factory?
Well, let me just talk about your premise for a moment, because we don't think that there's going to be major noise impacts or light impacts on the neighborhood. The good news, first of all, is that it's a commercial neighborhood, right? So the only residence is the second floor of a house that's across the street from the coal house. Otherwise, you're talking about the retirement community that's about a quarter of a mile to the north, and in between is Outer Bridge Crossing and a gun range, and then you're talking about basically Tottenville. So we don't have anyone that is close by on a residential basis. We obviously have the commercial businesses, which you know better than I what's there, but it's a real myriad mix of veterinarians and restaurants, coffee shops, martial arts academies, etc. The lights are designed so as to be completely focused into our site, and they have shields in order to minimize light going beyond our site. We've run models and have shown all this to the staff at the City Planning Commission. And I think that you're going to find that once we're up and running, that there will be no material light pollution affecting anyone that we wouldn't want affected. And we were particularly mindful of not having any kind of light impact on Outer Bridge Crossing, as I mentioned before, and the light poles that are closest to Outer Bridge Crossing are significantly below the bridge. So there just simply will not be given the way the lights are designed, any light pollution at all going from those lights up onto the bridge. The lights on the bridge are far more significant than anything that we're going to be shining. And in terms of noise, I mean, the fact of the matter is that we did an analysis looking at all the various kinds of engines that are going to be used on the site and the kind of activities that are going to be occurring on the site. And while it's not going to be silent, we don't think that it's going to be the kind of noise that you would expect to have an adverse impact on anyone in the neighborhood. Having said all this, if it turns out that once we're up and operating that there is a noise or there is something happening that is causing negative impact on the community, we're going to do something about it. You know, there is absolutely no question about that. But we've spent a lot of time looking at noise impact. We've spent a lot of time looking at traffic impact, and we just don't think that there's going to be an impact that is going to be of such materiality that it would cause concern or should cause concern for you.
On the intersection of Arthur Kill Road and Richmond Valley Road, can you just discuss the intersection changes that will happen there?
There are going to be a couple changes. The first is that the city is currently planning for and is going to commence work on in the not distant future a widening of Richmond Valley Road. In conjunction with that, ultimately, we will put in a new light at the corner at the intersection of Arthur Kill Road and Richmond Valley Road, and we will have a driveway as the fourth part of that intersection, but that driveway will only be there for emergency ingress and egress. It will not be the principal entrance or exit for the project. That will be at the north end of the project, close to close to Bridge Street, and there will be a gate across that area so that we don't expect there to be regular traffic going from either Richmond Valley Road or Arthur Kill Road into our site from that area. There also will be occurring, I should mention, in terms of our frontage on Arthur Kill Road closest to Richmond Valley Road, a widening of the street by 15 feet, which we'll be paying for, of course, and also installing a sidewalk.
And I guess his final question is, without violating any non-disclosure agreement or confidentiality agreement, you can say, though, that you're in conversations with these offshore wind developers, that we're not just chasing a unicorn here. You're in conversations with these developers to actually produce wind turbines.
We are. I was on a call with one of them as recently as yesterday afternoon. We're talking to all of them. But you have to understand that their timetable is not always our timetable. And the ones that are likely to use us are not the ones that have, not the two that have contracts with NYSERDA right now, because one of them is Ørsted, and they unfortunately are using a port in Connecticut for their operations, and the other is Equinor, which has South Brooklyn Marine Terminal. But all of the others need a port, and they're all talking to us, but they're thinking about wanting to have this pinned down 6 months from now, maybe, while, of course, we would like to pin it down yesterday.
Right.
So we're trying to balance those two things. But again, I've got to underscore what I consider to be the absolute key fact here, which is that we don't get built unless we've established that we're going to get used. And not just used once, but used continuously for a very long time. And we have so far made that case to those that are putting the money up to make us happen.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hanks.
Thank you so much. One of my questions, the council member of the 49th District in the North Shore, so we're very excited about the prospect of Staten Island utilizing offshore wind. So my question is, you mentioned that 3 acres of wetlands will be affected. What would be the environmental impact on 3 acres of wetlands? I mean, Staten Island really, it matters. Our wetlands matter. Our constituents really depend on the wetlands for drainage. We've had flooding issues all throughout the borough. So when you say that there's 3 acres of wetlands that will be disrupted, what do you believe is going to be the environmental impact? And second, what could we do to mitigate that?
I think the environmental impact is going to be a big positive, frankly. So the freshwater wetlands that have been identified is truly a overgrown drainage ditch. So, yeah, and it's filled with invasive species. It's mostly Phragmites. It has virtually no environmental value to it. It's certainly nothing that the environmentalists would recognize as value. So what we're going to be doing is filling that in order to be able to make it part of our laydown area and then also the area where we're going to be building a new warehouse. But what we're also doing as part of this overall project is two things that I think will be of interest to you, which is, first of all, the elevation of the overall project is going to rise considerably. So right now, on the western side along the Arthur Kill, we're obviously at zero elevation. We have a beach, right? That's going to go up to a little over 15 feet in order to be able to accommodate the vessels that will be coming in. And then very gradually it'll rise to reaching about 30 feet when you get to Arthur Kill Road, because that's about the height of the road. What that means is that you're going to give flood protection to the entire area far greater than it has today. So rather than floodwaters coming in at zero elevation, they've got to deal with 15 feet elevation. And back with Sandy, if that had been at 15 plus feet at that time, there would have been a whole different story in terms of how far waters would have been able to make it into that area. It has major flood deterrent value. Secondly, we're building in a whole drainage system that is eco-friendly, but at the same time will be very effective in ensuring not only that we get properly drained and that our drainage waters get treated before they end up in the Arthur Kill, but also we've designed it in such a way so that it continues to pick up drainage from all of the surrounding properties. So the veterinarian, the martial arts, the taco place, the radiology, all of them, their drainage will get processed through our new system, resulting in a far more effective drainage of the entire area than you have today. And the last thing I'll just mention is that even if you place some environmental value on those 3 acres, and I would strongly suggest you're not, what we're doing to mitigate is we are restoring and remediating 7 acres of freshwater wetlands in Mariners Marsh. So you're getting a better than 2-to-1 impact there in terms of mitigation, with far greater long-term value remediating and restoring that Mariners Marsh than continuing to preserve a drainage ditch next to Otterbrook Crossing.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Councilman McClure.
Thank you, Chair. So you talked a little bit about this wetland restoration and mitigation that you're going to have to do. But based on the numbers you gave, I think it was 7 acres in Staten Island and 35 in Jamaica Bay. You know, less than a quarter, less than a fifth of the restoration that's being yielded from a Staten Island project is going to be on Staten Island. And I heard you give your explanation as to why that is, but that's incredibly disappointing, because you're talking about, oh, we're getting more than 2-to-1 on Staten Island, but you're not doing us a favor. That's the formula the law sets. So I guess what I'm asking is, there's really zero acres that you could have found in other parts of Staten Island in addition to Mariners Marsh. Mariners Marsh is a great project. I think it's been 2 decades since that park has been open to the public because of the needs that have been there. So, but there's nothing in the Mid-Island, nothing else in the South Shore that you could have added to it, nothing else in the North Shore you could have added to that to make it more of a Staten Island benefit. I mean, less than a fifth. I think it's 16% and change of the acreage that you're going to be restoring is in Staten Island. That's ridiculous.
Well, there are 2 different restorations. And first of all, we don't think we're doing anybody any favors, okay? And if I suggested that, I didn't mean to. We don't feel like we're doing anybody favors. We have an obligation to mitigate, and we're fulfilling our obligation as best as we can. The 7 acres is fresh water, okay? That's one thing. And then you have to deal with the tidal wetlands, which is a different thing. And there, our impact is, you know, somewhere on the order of 25 acres of different kinds of tidal wetlands, but in the aggregate about 25 acres, most of which is still going to be there. It's just going to be deeper. So rather than it currently being, say, at 6 feet or 20 feet, it's going to be at 35 feet, but it'll still be there. So the only place where we're having, forgetting about for the moment the change in the water depth, the only place where we're having a permanent impact is where we're filling in order to build the quay, and that is roughly 9 acres. All right. So we had a challenge. And when we first set out, excuse me, when we first set out to find the right mitigation for that tidal wetlands impact, we looked only on Staten Island. And we looked at a number of opportunities. And we have talked with the protectors about this at some length. We walked them through all of this in some great detail because they had the same concern that you've raised, which is why isn't all the mitigation happening on Staten Island? And the fact of the matter is that it's not just us deciding where we're going to do this, it's us coming up with mitigation proposals that are acceptable to the city, that are acceptable to the Department of Environmental Conservation of the state, and that are acceptable to the federal agencies. And we have several federal agencies involved here. We have the Army Corps of Engineers, we have the Maritime Administration of the Department of Transportation, and we have the National Marine Fisheries Service of NOAA, of the Department of Interior. All of those we have to make happy with what we come up with for a mitigation plan. And we made several proposals that addressed the ratios, and the ratios do vary depending on the kind of mitigation you're going to do. So it's always 2 to 1. Sometimes it's 3 to 1. Sometimes it's 1 to 1. And that was a moving target depending on which possible alternatives we were looking at. But we looked at the possibility of doing major refurbishment of some of the pits that are lying off the shores of Staten Island to try to create more fish habitat in those areas. That turned out not to be acceptable to one or more of the agencies that I just identified. We talked about doing something at Arlington Park, but that proved not to be acceptable to one or more of those agencies. And I could spend an hour kind of walking you through all the alternatives that we looked at and all the various objections we heard from one agency or another, keeping in mind that they all had to agree on this for it to be viable in terms of us ultimately getting our permits. And ultimately, and having in mind that one of them at the federal level did a 180 on us about halfway through this process in terms of what they thought we had to be doing. And the other agencies all said, you're doing a 180, and they didn't care. I mean, they just did a 180, and then we had to deal with their new requirements. That led us ultimately to saying we've got to go outside of the Staten Island watershed because we can't find anything that's going to make everybody happy. And that's how we ended up in Jamaica Bay. This is not something where we just went, to heck with Staten Island, we'll just go do it over here. This is something where we tried very, very hard to do it on Staten Island, but ultimately, given all of the different folks that had a finger in this pie, we had to do it in a place where all of them said, yeah, okay, this probably is going to be okay.
Yeah, I think when agencies give you negative answers, that's when you come to elected officials, stakeholders, and say, hey, maybe we can try to get a different answer. That's literally our jobs. And I think that you're coming to us now saying you don't want to walk us an hour through all the if-thens that could have or didn't happen, but we could have helped you with those answers and gotten you different answers, and then maybe we'd get more of a benefit in Staten Island. So I find this whole thing to be deeply unsatisfying in terms of the answer you've given, and it's just very disappointing that a project that's based in Staten Island, which could have yielded enormous wetland benefits beyond the 7 acres you've identified at Mariners Marsh, doesn't seem to be going in that direction. Deeply dissatisfying.
Well, we of course did not speak with you about this, but I can assure you that we have spent a lot of time on the political side trying to get more cooperation with respect to this, and to date we've gotten where we've gotten. And some of these agencies, particularly at the federal level, march to their own drummer, and it's very, very difficult to even exert political suasion on some of these career federal officials. That's simply the reality of it. So I can assure you, I don't expect you not to be disappointed. We're disappointed, frankly. But I can assure you that we did not doing this outside of Staten Island lightly. We did everything that we had the capacity to do to try to make it happen on Staten Island, and ultimately, however, we ended up where we are.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify regarding the special permit application relating to Arthur Kill proposal remotely or in person?
No, there's no one signed up online or in person to testify.
If there are no members of the public who wish to testify regarding the special permit proposal relating to the Arthur Kill proposal remotely, please press raise hand button now.
We still don't have anyone online.
All right. There being no other members of the public who wish to testify on LUs 101 through 104 regarding the Arthur Kill proposal, the public hearing is now closed and the item is laid over. That concludes today's business. I would like to thank the members of the public, my colleagues, Subcommittee Council, Land Use, and Council staff, and the Sergeant at Arms for participating in today's meeting. This meeting is hereby adjourned.